Hey everyone, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories with D&D Doge. In today's video, we have a story about a player going off the handle over one day's worth of rations. A story about a player's first game being one that turned them away from Dungeons & Dragons, and much more. But before we get into those, I feel we need a blessing from Simba to get through these stories. There we go. Now I think we're ready to dive right into the cringe. The Horror Is Me by Reddit user Horny But Tired. It was an accident, I swear. Back in the old days of 1st edition, Advanced D&D, I played occasionally with a friend that we'll call Friendly. Friendly was a forever DM who couldn't say no to new players. He had got tons of friends, and most of them were pretty new to gaming, and if they wanted to play, by golly, he was going to make space at the table for them. He would never turn away someone who wanted to play. Which is how he wound up with a 14-person adventuring party. The party was a rambling mess, riven with factions based on character alignments and player friendships. But it had held together long enough for everyone to be in the neighborhood of about 9th level, as they quested to stop an evil wizard from unleashing a magical apocalypse. Players came and players went, so the group was rarely at full strength. But lately, the game had been approaching a big deal phase of the whole campaign, and everyone was showing up regular. Friendly invited me to drive down from the next city over to be a part of this next bit, which he was very excited about. So I dusted off my drop-in character for that campaign, and leveled them up to where the rest of the party was, and went down to play. I knew some of the players a little, most of them not at all, and of the ones who had never met my character, they had only met them for 1 or 2 sessions, months and months ago. Now, it's important to know that I'm playing a 1st edition Jester, which is kinda like a modern bard in some ways, but it wasn't a well-known class back then. Crucially, no one in the group, realized that I had some thief skills, like being able to pick pockets. There's some minor encounters as the party explores some ruins that used to belong to a magic academy that the big bad wizard destroyed, some roleplay, and then we make camp for the night. Friendly reminds everyone to mark off rations, and I realized that I don't have any. I pass him a note, embarrassed at my lack of preparation, but willing to own it. He passes back the note, asking what I want to do, so I let him know that I'll lift a day's rations off of someone random. Yes, I know, I caused this, but in my defense, I had no idea one day's rations would start so much. No one else in the party caught this, as they were all role-playing or just chatting. Eventually, Friendly calls everyone to order and says, almost in passing, that the ranger is short 1 day's rations. And that's when it started. The ranger instantly assumed that the assassin had stolen his rations. There was, apparently, some history going on there. He squares up and belligerently accuses the assassin of shenanigans. He's backed up by the druid and a minotaur fighter. But the assassin is not without friends of his own, and his buddies line up to try and back down the ranger and his posse. Then the paladins, 2 of them, get involved and try to break everything up. It might have worked if the assassin hadn't gotten tired of it and just flat out attacked the ranger. All hell broke loose. The fight lasted hours, and Friendly, who was the world champion proponent of not saying no to players, just adjudicated it all. Hours later, 2/3 of the party is dead, including the ranger and the assassin, with the lead paladin missing an arm. And me? Everyone forgot about me. I was new. Well, sort of. I'd only been to a few sessions over the whole campaign. No one knew me that well or had any feelings towards me, positive or negative. When everything started, I told Friendly that I was hiding, which I did with my thief skills. And after that, people seemed to forget that I was there. So after this Armageddon, I was the only one left unscathed, and one of the few left alive. The denouement is boring enough. I helped the survivors back to the nearest settlement to regroup and heal. I then told Friendly that I was going to leave all my gold for them, along with a note explaining my role in everything and apologizing, and then skipped town. I later heard that the whole group suffered a TPK trying to fight a subordinate big bad, but I wasn't there for that, so that one wasn't my fault. Man, talk about making a mountain of bodies out of a molehill. One day's rations created such a tear in the team that it caused that many deaths? Also, I can't even imagine what it would be like to run a game for 14 players, though it sounds like the herd was thinned over this small instance. OP could have just said something and borrowed some rations from someone, but I can see OP as a player that only played with this group a couple of times, wanting to do some of the stuff that his class could do, and by the times things escalated the way they did, can just see wanting to see how it all played out. Let's move on. First and last time, I'll try Dungeons & Dragons. By Reddit user KingWrath001. This was about a year ago. My girlfriend had this group of friends who liked playing D&D often, and asked if I would like to try it. I turned it down because I never played or watched anything like it, but she always asked anyways. One day, I finally said yes, and watched how everything was played and how the story was told. Something about the lore of the game scratched an itch I never thought I had. When the game was over, I asked the DM if it was okay if I made a character and was able to join. DM was excited and helped me learn about the game. I had 2 weeks to learn as much as I could, and my girlfriend was overjoyed and helped me a lot. She bought me some expensive dice, bought me books, told me about the races and classes. The more I kept investing, the more excited I got, waiting and counting the days until the next game session. I was talking to the DM the whole time while I was making my character, even going as far as to buy outfits to dress up as my character in the game, and even paid a friend to 3D print a mini. My girlfriend was laughing from how all out I was going. I was new to this and liked what I saw, so I wanted to go all out. The day finally came when we could play, and everyone was shocked on how all out I went. My character was a human, dual-wielding fighter. The game started. DM had them meet my character, and they all saw my character slay some monsters by myself. Everyone was level 7, so he made mine that too. The DM narrated how my character would make a good addition to the group, and everyone agreed that I would be good for the team, though player 4, who was also a fighter, said that, "We don't need another fighter." I thought he was just speaking in character, since his character was egotistic and edgy, and I had made my character lighthearted and humble. Player 4 and me talked back and forth on who would be the better fighter. Eventually, his character challenged mine to a duel, but I turned it down by saying, "If I said you were the best now, would we be able to carry on? I would like to get a rest after fighting these creatures." Before I could even rest, suddenly we got ambushed by a group of bandits. So not only was my character already tired, but was also caught by surprise. The dungeon master said that a bandit snuck up on me and tried to stab me in the back, and that I had to roll a saving throw. I landed a 17, but it wasn't good enough, so I got stabbed by a deadly poison dagger and died slowly from it. After the fight, player 4 said, "Well, looks like I was the better fighter after all." The group then said some shallow words about my character and moved on. I sat there for 5 hours watching them play, and my girlfriend was texting me about how sorry she was and said that we could just go home, though I turned it down because I didn't want her to just leave mid-game. After the game, my girlfriend talked to the DM and asked why the hell did he kill my character right off the bat. It turns out that while I was texting the DM about my character, DM and player 4 were talking too. Player 4 didn't like that I was going to be a fighter, and started talking to the group, asking if they were okay with my character dying right away. They were okay with it, and didn't care about everything that I did. My girlfriend bitched them all out, and stopped playing with them after that. Ever since then, I have been turned off by D&D related things. Would I like to try it again? Maybe. But that put D&D in a really bad spotlight for me. Wow, what a bunch of douchebags. I mean, if OP picking fighter was such a big deal, why not just ask him to pick a different class? Why go through all the trouble of letting OP get excited, make his character, and look forward to the game so much, only to plan to insta-kill him just after being introduced? It's no wonder that OP's girlfriend yelled at the group and quit after that. It sucks that this turned OP away from D&D, but hopefully he'll be able to give it another go with a group that aren't all dickheads. On to the next one. Guy with main character syndrome, except when he had the opposite. By Reddit user Horny But Tired. I used to be in a really great group for about 6 years, with terrific people. I had to move away for work, but we kept in touch. I still play online with one of them, in fact, but there was a dude in the group who everyone loathed. We'll call him Pouty. Except for one guy, who was a friend of Pouty. As it happened, friend of Pouty was very influential in the group, so Pouty kept getting invited to games. And Pouty's main problem was that he had raging main character syndrome, except when he had whatever the exact opposite of it was. An example of the main character syndrome. We played a Star Trek game, and Pouty loved Star Trek and insisted that he be captain, but as captain, he behaved like a tyrant. To illustrate, we were beaming down to a non-technologically advanced planet, and he wanted us to have our fancy advanced tech just out in the open. As the ship's science officer who specialized in archaeology and anthropology, I mildly suggested that we could disguise our tricorders and phasers in quote-unquote primitive gear appropriate to the culture, so that we wouldn't stand out immediately as aliens. He went ballistic and accused me of trying to quote sabotage the mission, eventually threatening to restrict me to my quarters, effectively taking me out of the adventure. I told him to get effed, and he later apologized and admitted that the only reason he was against my plan is that he liked picturing the characters in their low-tech disguises while holding tricorders and phasers. But he would also actively avoid taking the spotlight when people tried to give him a chance to shine. We had a long-running Pathfinder 1st Edition game, started in beta, and Pouty played a barbarian. The Game Master was great, giving each player character time to shine in different subplots that were tied to the overall campaign. The half-elf fighter who had been in our small-town militia already had some spotlight time where she leveled up, literally and narratively, and took command of the small town's defenses as captain. It was nice. But when the turn came for Pouty's barbarian to get the spotlight time, he sulked and avoided it like the plague, refusing to roleplay, and basically just focusing on his hit chances and damage bonuses, and even refusing to use the shiny special tribal weapon that the Game Master had designed just for Pouty's barbarian. He claimed that it wasn't as good as his generic magic sword, though it was way better. Oh, and as a bonus, Pouty complained about the game to everyone else but the Game Master, bitching about how it was just a series of combats with no roleplay, even though it had crazy detailed roleplay, if he wasn't being a pouty baby and ignoring every hook the Game Master threw at him. So he wanted to be the main character if the rest of us preferred cooperation, and if someone wanted him to take a turn as the main character, well, then he didn't want to do it. I have no idea why anyone would act that way, except I guess as some kind of power play. The unexciting conclusion to it all was that after a particularly egregious incident, we told friend of Pouty in no uncertain terms that Pouty sucked, we hated him, and that it was him or us. Friend of Pouty was shocked that anyone didn't like Pouty, but agreed that he was kind of an a-hole, and Pouty was uninvited from the group from then on. He and friend of Pouty still do solo games from time to time, but the rest of us were spared from Pouty's manipulative BS from then on. Definitely a confusing situation when you get a player with main character syndrome to not take the spotlight when given to him. Perhaps he just really liked Star Trek and wasn't much for fantasy. Though personally, I think that the group could have brought these issues up with Pouty before just kicking him outright. Though, what would you guys do in this situation? Let's move on to today's final story. That Time Rocks Fell and I Died, by Reddit user NinjaTommy21. As a preface, it wasn't rocks that killed my character, just something in a similar vein. Years ago, I was invited to play Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with the Birthright module, so I had to learn both, though that's not the horror story. In Birthright, you play in a world where people have the blood of gods, including your characters. You also might rule a kingdom. The Dungeon Master was upfront that he intended for this to be difficult, that our choices were going to be punished. Of course, I didn't see an issue with this. I've run, to this day, campaigns like this. Tomb of Annihilation was a fun one to run, under this punishing preface. So the first campaign ended with the party dying, and that was cool. It was our choices that led to our downfall. We were captured and put on a ship to be sold off, when a kraken attacked. This gave us time to free ourselves. The intention was for us to help the pirates and befriend them as a result, but like any player, we had our own plans. Me and another player were playing halfling brothers. Halflings in this world are from the Shadow Realm originally, and we decided to use our ability to teleport ourselves and the other two players to the Shadow Realm. So we escaped the Kraken and our captors. The Shadow Realm in this campaign allowed us to see the Mortal Realm, but also travel it much like the Nether in Minecraft. We planned on getting over land and going back. Instead, we got into an encounter and the other two players died. Having no other choice, me and my halfling brother hopped back to the Mortal Realm and found ourselves in the hands of a genie. Long story short, we convinced her to help us get home, but when we tried to convince her to help out with food, she made us fetch it. This led to our deaths at the many tentacles of a giant octopus, though we almost won. The above is important because it sets up that, yes, this was going to be hard, but it was our choices that led to this outcome. It felt justified, cool, hard, and possible. We jump to our next campaign and roll up new characters in this world, though I honestly can't recall what everyone picked. I know that I was a goblin and another player was a wizard. We roll our god powers, and the wizard rolls the highest under the sun god, while I roll the lowest under this evil god. We decided that we'll do a single nation this time around, and play with the wizard as the main ruler, while we are all underlings, in charge of different things. This was perfect. His powers give him a warm aura at all times, and a ton of powers, while the evil god that I got meant that I was cold and cursed to slowly become a monster as my godly blood grew stronger. Immediately, a story was in place, a path in which I could take the character, and I was excited. The Dungeon Master dashed that immediately. After the first month of the city phase, we get random events rolled, and the DM rolls an assassination attempt on my goblin. Instead of being reasonable or making it hard but possible, the Dungeon Master decided to roll for everything about this attempt on my character's life. I accepted limitations, a challenge, and something fun, but instead, the Dungeon Master had a level 20 wizard rolled up. They scryed to tell when I was asleep and alone, teleported into my room, reduced me to dust, and gutted my ashes out into the wind so I couldn't be revived. I was given no chances, no opportunity to save myself, nothing. It had gone from a challenging campaign to DM versus player, and the DM wins. Rocks fall and you die. I never spoke to that Dungeon Master again after that. Now, I can understand a campaign being challenging, and certain things in it being difficult, but it sounds like this DM just said, "Hey, OP, you know that character you're excited to play? Well, now he's dead, and there was nothing you could do about it." So I can understand why OP didn't want to play with that DM again. I mean, you would think that OP would have been able to at least roll for something to prevent that. So here's hoping that OP finds a better DM to play with. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.